Welcome to Talk SCB and welcome back here to the channel, guys. And yes, today we do have more transfer talk and there is a lot on the agenda for today's video, starting of course with the latest on the situation of Antoine Griezmann and why we should be discounting any doubts right now about the deal. Then we'll move on to a potential Brazilian youngster who could be on his way to Barcelona in the coming years. Then on to the futures of Paco Alcácer, Denis Suárez and some Masia prospects, some Barcelona B players who may well be making the step up if possible. And finally, we will be discussing Melo and the latest on Andres Iniesta, the man who sadly left us, and we will have some news on his future and whether or not his shirt will be retired. So all of that then, guys, and more coming up today in the roundup. Let's do this. So we are going to start, like I say, with Antoine Griezmann, and I did mention yesterday there were a few doubts about the deal, a few sort of negative vibes going around in the national media, and I think that's about right. I think right now there's a little bit of nervousness maybe in Barcelona, this one won't happen, and it all comes about basically because of Diego Godin. On Sunday, I mentioned that Antoine Griezmann yesterday was booed by Atletico Madrid fans, and basically a video emerged of Diego Godin telling the Atletico fans, don't boo Griezmann because he's staying, and from that a lot of reports are saying now that he might sign a new deal at Atletico, he is going to stay there, and it seems very similar to me, like the Neymar situation. You know, Piqué came out, he said that Neymar was staying, we all believed him, we all thought that obviously he had that inside knowledge. In the end though, it didn't actually have that kind of impact, although Rack One have said that Atletico Madrid right now have halted their striker search for the time being with the club and the teammates at Atletico. They're doing everything possible to keep Griezmann, and for me right now, it looks a bit like this. The entire Griezmann situation seems like a case really of everybody trying to protect themselves. You know, Atletico Madrid want to make it seem to their fans, to the players, like they're doing everything in their power to keep Griezmann, and likewise, Antoine Griezmann doesn't really want to make it look like he's turning his back on Atletico Madrid. He probably, when he leaves, will make out like maybe the boos changed his mind, maybe he was going to stay, but maybe at the last minute then he changed his mind and he had to go, and he doesn't want to make it look bad on his own part. And at the same time, Barcelona, we don't want to push the deal too much too soon, simply because of Atletico Madrid making that complaint to FIFA earlier on this year, and they were unhappy about our approach. So I think that right now it's simply a case of all of those parties coming together and just being a bit cautious. Griezmann right now is staying silent, he's not making any comment, he's not committing himself. Atletico Madrid clearly behind the scenes trying to do everything they can, but I just think in the end he will end up at Barca. That's the gut feeling that I have. Copa come out and said that Griezmann has not told any of his teammates about his future, and both Sport and MD say that Griezmann has given his word to Barcelona. On July the 1st, they will move, they will activate that 100 million release clause, and he will then become a Barcelona player, and at that time, there will be nothing at all that Atletico Madrid can do about it. And even Bartomeu himself, in an interview with Cat Radio yesterday, he did say, I'm not going to talk about Griezmann, but we will start to talk about Atletico, about the striker, in July. So it does seem right now like the reports are contrasting, like they always are really, in the transfer time. It does go around, there's different sides to every story, but I just think in the gut feeling that I have, Griezmann will be a Barcelona player sooner rather than later. But now it is time though to talk about another potential forward that could be joining the club, not this window though, but in 2020, and that comes basically in the form of Santos youngster Rodrygo, somebody who is very, very talented, very highly rated back in Brazil, and it is definitely a move when you look to the future. Sport and MD this morning, both of them together coming on the same day, talking about Rodrygo. Basically, MD said that Pep Segura had travelled to Brazil to work on a deal with Santos that would see the 17-year-old forward join the club in 2020, so 2 years from now. Rodrygo, when he was 19 years of age, would join Barcelona, and Sport also talked about Rodrygo in today's edition. They say that Barca are interested in the striker, and they state that we're not the only club looking at him, with Man City and PSG also looking at the striker. And also, on the subject of forwards, we do move swiftly on to Paco Alcácer, and despite some reports that have said this morning that basically Paco Alcácer could end up staying at the club this summer, I do think that it's most likely right now that he'll end up leaving, especially if we do sign Antoine Griezmann and if we're keeping Luis Suarez, because then for me, Paco's game time will be basically non-existent, especially when you consider even this season, he hasn't played a great deal of time, and even then, you know, Suarez had some dips in form, he's had a little lapse in fitness, yes, he could have had games, but he hasn't done. Even this season, when he's only been competing with Suarez, he hasn't played enough games, he's not been given a chance, and I just think at 24 years old now, 2 seasons on following his signing from Valencia, Paco hasn't really established himself in the squad, and to be honest, like I say, he hasn't really never been given a serious run of games, and I think that if he were to leave this summer, and he's been linked with an interesting return to his former club Valencia, he would leave very much so with his head held high, and with our blessing in many ways, because I think whenever he's played, he's gone out there, he's given 110%, he's always worn the shirt with pride, and to be honest, whenever he's played, he does often contribute in terms of goals. It does remain to be seen though whether Valencia would accept him back. There is a bit of bad blood there between Paco Alcácer and the Valencia fans, and most importantly, if he was to go this summer, how much of that 30 million fee we spent in 2016 would we recoup this summer? Also now, on to Denis Suárez, who has forced himself, I think, into a really strong position during the past few weeks, making Ernesto Valverde really reconsider his stance on the 24-year-old. At the start of the year, we all knew it, Valverde completely froze out Denis Suárez. He wasn't in his plans, he wasn't in his teams, and he hardly even made the squad list, let alone actually get on the pitch. At the start of the year, he really was down in the pecking order, but several impressive cameo appearances, coming off the bench, making an impact, really enforcing himself in that midfield and in the front three. He has really impressed Valverde, he's impressed the club, and it's made them stand back and think, you know what, maybe Denis Suárez could be part of our plans. Originally, it thought that he could be leaving this summer, he wasn't in Valverde's good books, but right now, things are much more settled. After the Copa del Rey final, Denis came out, he said, I want to stay, I want to be a success at Barcelona, and right now, if you're going to look at both sides, I think he's more inclined to stay. And now we move on to our La Masia prospects, and in particular, 2 exciting players who could well be making a step up to the first team in the very near future. According to Rack 1, a reliable source when it comes to Barcelona, Carlos Alenia could be promoted to the first team this summer, and he is expected once again to join up with the first team squad for pre-season training, just like he did last summer as well. Alenia this season has been really good for Barcelona B. He's featured consistently right throughout the season down in the Segunda Division, and he's actually been their top goal scorer this season, even though he's played a lot of his football from that midfield position. And to be honest now, 20 years old, a bit of experience behind him, he's got a few first team appearances on his belt, and I think we are all hoping now that Alenia gets the opportunity to really come to the first team and showcase that huge potential that he does seem to have. And the other player that I will discuss from La Masia and from Barcelona B, also some absolutely fantastic news if it's true that Oriol Busquets will imminently sign a new contract with the club. That will happen now in the coming weeks, if reports to be believed. The 19-year-old is really impressed me in the same holding midfield role as his namesake Sergio, exactly the same role, something we do lack, to be honest, in the first team of backup for Sergio Busquets, and I think it's really important that we do reach an agreement with Oriol, because whenever I've seen him, he's really impressed me, his work on the ball, he's so comfortable, he suits our style of play, and I think considering his contract runs out this summer, it expires this summer, he could walk away for nothing. If we don't get that renewed, it should be a priority, and I really hope it happens. And just a very quick word on Arthur Melo, because this is one that really there hasn't been a lot of reports about in the past few days, in the past few weeks. We've obviously reached an agreement to sign him. Nothing yet, though, has been signed, sealed and delivered, and we still don't know whether he'll turn up this summer or in January. Barcelona, according to MD, do want to bring him in this summer. They are trying very hard, but it is not going to be easy to convince Gremio, who originally were believed that he would let him go in January and not before. So we are working on that one. Whether or not we will see Arthur in the coming months, we don't know. I certainly hope so, though. And finally, guys, it is time to talk about Andres Iniesta. Obviously left the club on Sunday, played his last game, a very emotional time for us all. It has nearly now been confirmed that he will be on his way to play his football in Japan. Rackman reporting that in the coming day we will see Iniesta unveiled. He's now travelling to Japan, obviously a long flight from Spain, and he will then arrive and sign his contract, and it will be official very soon indeed. But a lot of people seem to be asking me, and this is something that happens now regularly when legends depart the club, should we now retire the Andres Iniesta number 8 shirt of the club, which would basically mean that then nobody else in our history would wear the number 8 shirt again, as a sign of respect for the great man that Iniesta is. And I remember exactly the same questions being asked, the likes of Xavi, even Carlos Puyol as well, of course, and a lot of people think that would be a great thing to do, and I completely agree. Andres Iniesta, Xavi, Puyol, they would all deserve that, but the problem is, in Spain, it's very difficult to do it. Outside of Spain, we see it done a lot, certainly in Italy, when they can have numbers up to 99. You've seen the likes of Paolo Maldini's number 3 shirt retired at AC Milan, Javier Zanetti's number 4 retired at Inter, and even Maradona's number 10 at Napoli all being retired. But in La Liga, it simply doesn't really happen, apart from very, very extreme circumstances, because basically in La Liga, you can only have shirt numbers up to the number 25. You cannot exceed your first team shirt numbers above number 25, which basically means that when it comes to retiring shirt numbers, it can give you a lot of problems, because then obviously you have less and less options when it comes to assigning new players with a squad number, and it can become difficult if you start retiring numbers. So sadly, as much as Iniesta would deserve it, it's very, very unlikely that we are going to see the number 8 shirt retired, or indeed any player when it comes to Barcelona in the near future. And so that is basically today's news when it comes to transfers and on the Barcelona front, guys. Thank you as always for joining me. I really do appreciate all of your support, all of your comments. Thank you so much for getting involved. Leave me your thoughts down below, guys, on today's breaking news, and as always, if there is anything else, I will get it to you as soon as possible. I'll see you soon then, but until then, as always, Vasca el Barça!
Barça! Barça!